All right, there's two different ways to get an off-market property in real estate. Either from a seller motivated by external factors or someone you've built up a relationship with wants to sell to you. So in this video, I'm going over the best ways to find these motivated sellers and why it's also important to build relationships with other real estate professionals. The main way to find motivated sellers is by reaching out to them directly. You can do this by using platforms like PropStream, Deal Machine, or Batch Leads to find the information of these potentially motivated sellers. On these platforms, you can filter out lists based on all kinds of things like how old the owner is, how long they've owned it, probate, and even owners that have filed for bankruptcy recently. Later in the video, I will go over several ways to get motivated sellers information without spending money on these platforms, but they are a good source. Anyways, in my opinion, the best ones to target on or off these platforms are pre-foreclosures, properties that have liens on them, and vacant homes. Once you get these owners' information, you will either need to mail them a letter, call them, or knock on their door. I think the safest and most sustainable way would be to either call or mail them. If you have more time than money, I would recommend calling them. And if you have more money than time, go with sending out mailers. Now, the reason I say these three is because in all three situations, something is not going to plan in that owner's life. A pre-foreclosure is when the homeowner has missed 3 to 6 mortgage payments, and the bank files a notice of default to start the foreclosure process. The homeowner usually has 30 to 90 days to catch up their payments or pay off the loan by selling to avoid foreclosure. So they literally cannot afford the property anymore. In most cases, out of all the bills a person has, the last one they don't pay is their mortgage. They probably have credit card debt and could be behind on their car payment. So not only do they need a quick sale before the bank takes it, but also need the money quickly before their other debts start spiraling out of control. This 30 to 90 days after the bank gives them the notice about foreclosure is the perfect time window for you to contact them and give them a quick closing offer on their property. A lot of times it's a similar but less desperate situation for properties that have involuntary liens on them. An involuntary lien means the owner has had some type of legal claim placed on their property, usually due to unpaid debts or legal obligations. So this could be things like unpaid medical debt, money owed from a lawsuit, or a mechanic's lien that someone has placed for unpaid work performed on the property. A lot of the owners of these properties with these types of liens on them are not in as urgent of a situation as a pre-foreclosure, because most of the time they have worked out a payment plan with the court or whoever placed the lien. And the lien is just in place in case they default on those payments. But when you're contacting owners of properties that have liens on them, usually you'll find that the most motivated ones are property owners with tax liens. Now, the reason that is because if someone doesn't pay their property taxes, the local government can foreclose on their property just like a bank can. Typically, after 3 to 12 months of property taxes not being paid, the local government will place the lien on the property. Now, it's different in every state, but in most cases, 1 to 3 years after placing the lien, if the property owner still hasn't paid the tax bill, the property will go up for auction and be sold by the county. It's similar to a pre-foreclosure, but instead of 30 to 90 days before the bank forecloses, it's 1 to 3 years before the tax foreclosure. But if you contact someone late in the process, right before the auction is set to take place, you may find that same level of motivation for a quick sale. Now, you might be thinking, in these first two types of off-market leads, why wouldn't you want to just wait until the auction happens to see if you're the only bidder and get it for an even better deal? Plus, you wouldn't have to spend any money for these platforms or mailers. You just have to show up to the auction instead. Well, for one, you are obviously introducing competition from other investors at an auction, which could drive up the price. Second, unless you know a lot about the owner and the property situation, you are making your offer at the foreclosure auction completely blind. Almost all of these auction offers must be made sight unseen, have no contingencies at all, require a non-refundable deposit, and sometimes you may still be held responsible for all other liens on the property. So if you win the auction within 24 hours after the auction is over, you'll be required to give a non-refundable deposit of 5 to 10% of the purchase price. If you back out for any reason after this, you will lose that deposit and often will no longer be allowed to bid on that bank or county's auctions anymore. When you reach out to an owner directly before any auctions, most of the time you will meet them at the property to look at it, find out what their situation is, and possibly give them your offer. Many times in this offer, you can include a 10-day as-is inspection contingent. contingency. Also, possibly any other inspections you want to include, and you are usually not competing with any other buyers. So finding the seller directly before the auction is the best move to get a low price, not lose any earnest money, and also not have to deal with any unforeseen inspection or title issues that might come up after closing. Now, the reason I wanted to include vacant houses as well is because while they may not be as motivated as the other two lead types, something is still not going to plan. Unless that person is wealthy, people do not buy a house to let it sit vacant for a long period of time. Especially not the kind of homes an investor would target, that need work. I'm not talking about a lake house that someone uses as a vacation home. If someone has a vacant house, it is costing them money in some type of way. This gives you an opportunity to provide a quick sale and eliminate those holding costs for them, since they're not using the property anyway. Okay, now let's go over some ways to find these three types of leads information other than using subscription platforms for this data. Then we'll go over the best relationships to build with other real estate professionals to find off-market properties. A way to find pre-foreclosures is to check with the county's clerk's office or recorder of deeds and ask for a list of owners that have been sent notice of default filings. Some way to find properties with involuntary liens on them would be to go to the county's recorder's office and search for any recorded liens placed. Also, you can go to the county treasury or tax assessor and get a list of properties that are delinquent in their property taxes. And also sometimes you can get a list of properties that are set to go to tax auction in the near future. Another way is to look at the public court or judgment records for any judgment liens that have been placed as a result of a lawsuit. For vacant houses, a good way to search would be to look for houses with obvious signs of distress, like tall weeds, broken windows, and piled up mail. This is also known as driving for dollars. The U.S. Postal Service also keeps tabs on what properties have gone vacant. You can ask your local post office for a vacant address list. You could visit the county's code enforcement office and get a list of properties with long-standing code violations like uncut grass. Another unique way is to reach out to your city or local utility provider and see if they can give you a list of all the addresses that have shut off all their utilities for an extended period of time. If you combine all of these ways, you can definitely get a large list to mail or call without having to pay for these subscription platforms. Now that we've talked about the best ways to go directly to these owners, I want to go over the best relationships to build so you can have an entire team looking for properties for you. I'm just going to go through them to give you some ideas for people who you could get in touch with. Obviously, you don't need to talk to all of them. Pick the ones you like the best, but focus mainly on the last two. First group of people, attorneys. You could build a relationship with any of these. You have divorce attorneys, probate attorneys, closing attorneys, and eviction attorneys. It's obvious why divorce and probate would be helpful. Closing attorneys can be helpful by identifying properties with liens on them to you, and eviction attorneys can help you get in touch with potentially tired landlords. They are fresh out of an eviction and may have distressed properties they're looking to sell. The next group is property managers. Similar to eviction attorneys, they can get you in contact with tired landlords that may have problem tenants or significant repairs to complete. Next, we have lenders. Private and hard money lenders may know of flippers in the area that are struggling to complete their flips and may be motivated to sell the still distressed property quickly. Then we have contractors. Similar to lenders, they can possibly get you in touch with homeowners and investors that have run out of money on a rehab that need to sell their distressed property quickly. Next, and most important, is a real estate agent. Real estate agents make calls and send out mail to property owners all over the city you want to invest in. They are looking for deals the same way an investor is. They might not be targeting the same exact leads, but often come across very motivated sellers. If someone is in pre-foreclosure status or needs to sell quickly due to external factors, most of the time they call a real estate agent first. If you are able to build up a relationship with an agent, they may bring you these deals before listing them on the MLS. They will let you know that the seller is looking to sell and see if you're interested. If the seller is willing, they may accept an offer from you before the property ever goes active. The reason a seller would do this is because they get offered a quick sale with an investor that the agent has recommended and also don't have to deal with any additional negotiations, showings, or inspections. I actually do this with all of my listings. The day before I list a property on the MLS, I will send out the information to investors in the area I have a relationship with, letting them know that the property is not listed on the MLS yet and see if any of them want to make an offer on it. If the seller likes their offer and doesn't want to deal with everything involved with having an actively listed home, they may accept. They also may like the investor's offer, but are not in a rush to sell. So they want to test the entire market to see if someone can beat it first. If nobody gives them better terms or price on the open market, they may keep that investor's offer in their back pocket and come back to it. If you are looking for properties in the Central Virginia area and want to join that list of investors to be the first to know of any off-market properties for sale, all my information is in the description for you to contact me. But in my opinion, that's the best way to work with agents in getting off-market properties. There are other situations like when the seller wants to be more secretive about selling their home, but usually these types of official off-market listings are not too motivated to sell. The next group to build relationships with is other real estate investors. Now, the reason it's helpful to do this is because if you build a strong relationship with another investor in the area, they may be willing to sell some of their properties directly to you off market. I think the best win-win situation for this is for them to sell using seller financing. I think seller financing is great for both parties because the buyer can pay full market value, but still negotiate the right terms and interest rate to be able to cash flow. On top of that, the seller receives tax benefits from not receiving all the purchase price at once and still getting a consistent monthly income like before, but no longer having to deal with managing the property anymore. If you use these platforms we've talked about through this video, you can build a list of all the investors in the area that own their properties free and clear. These are the perfect landlords to build relationships with and explain the benefits of seller financing to, because most likely they are older and have owned real estate for a very long time. They may not want to be a landlord in retirement or pass down any management obligations to their kids. This gives you the opportunity to offer them a consistent monthly payment they could pass down without having to deal with everything that comes with being a landlord. Now, in terms of how to build relationships with every one of these groups, all of them are the same. You need to provide value to them and their business. That means sending as many referrals to them as possible. If you reach out to one of these groups, they often need recommendations for another one of these services we just talked about. Like investors often need contractors and lenders, agents often need attorneys, investors, and vice versa. This gives you the opportunity to not only provide value by giving recommendations to one group, but also by providing your recommendations, you are sending a referral to the other group's business, killing two birds with one stone. Now, none of this is a theory. A client and I actually use one of these methods I went over in this video to buy a property and sell it 20 days later for a profit of $70,000. I made a video going over the entire story and all the numbers involved. I'll put a link to that video here so you can find out which one of these methods we use to get that property. And if you need help buying, selling, or investing in real estate, all my information will be in the description.